Want to expand the reach of your content? Start a podcast. Feature industry experts on your show and leverage the influence and reach of your guests to grow your brand. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Andy Zimmerman. He is the CMO at Evergage. Andy, how you doing today?
Good, James. Thanks.
I'm really excited to chat with you today, Andy. We're going to be talking about creating a disruptive marketing campaign. But before we get into that, I'd love for you to explain to our listeners what Evergage is all about.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Just to give you a little bit of background, we're a B2B software as a service company, and we provide the leading real-time personalization platform. And what that means is our solution enables marketers to personalize the experience with their, whether it's website visitors or app users or even email recipients, all the way down to the one-to-one level. And this is done, in real time, and it's based on who that person is and what their interests are. And that's all determined through some in-depth behavioral tracking that the system provides.
I love it. So we've got a lot to talk about today. And so I'd love to jump right into it. And I think to get us started, when you use the term disruptive marketing, what's that mean? How do you define that term?
Yeah, sure. When you're a small company, you got to be scrappy and come up with some creative ideas. And the way I view disruptive marketing is basically you're trying to raise awareness for your own company by drafting on some of the efforts of maybe a larger company or particularly a larger competitor. So you do that in a couple of ways. You can do it by raising concerns about that company or particularly that company's claims, right? So it's never anything personal. It's about what they're saying. And if you can combat those claims, then, use your voice that way. But you're also trying to insert yourself into their conversation. So again, getting back to the point of drafting, a bigger company typically has a much bigger marketing budget, a louder voice. And if you can piggyback on some of the things that they're doing to get your brand out there, then that's another form of disruptive marketing.
Got it. And Andy, I'd love to kind of share some kind of real world examples so our listeners can kind of have an understanding of what this looks like in the real world. And you've actually got a story of what you guys have done, with a recent disruptive marketing campaign. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So our key competitor is Adobe. Maybe a surprise, maybe not a surprise. They're certainly the leading player in digital marketing, and they have great publicity and a great reputation. But they also make a lot of claims that aren't quite accurate, and there are a number of soft spots, if you will, that we've been able to go after. So in our disruptive marketing efforts against Adobe, we've taken three different approaches, and I'll talk mostly about the third one. But we started with a video that we produced several months ago and made it very humorous, used animated characters and combated a lot of the claims about their personalization capabilities. Not really true real time, not truly one-to-one, et cetera. And we also did a blog post around our positioning and particularly our key differentiators relative to Adobe, and tried to market that out through channels where people are following Adobe, particularly their digital marketing suite. Yeah. And then the third area that we did most recently which was probably the most fun thing we did, and it kind of built on the previous efforts, was to crash the Adobe Summit, their big conference, several thousand people in Vegas. It just happened a few weeks ago, by sending a small but loud team to do some marketing outside their event. And that was the crashing.
Got it. What were some of the results of doing something like that, particularly with that third one?
Yeah, so, it isn't an original concept, although it isn't widely used, which is good. If it was widely used, it might not be as effective.
Yeah.
There's precedent for it. I go back to remembering when Salesforce in its early days famously staged some protests outside of their competitor then was Siebel Systems, which is, was subsequently bought by Oracle. And, that's where the no software, they started using their no software logo way back then. So there's precedent for it, and there have been a few other companies that have done. So we did do a little homework on some of the practices that other companies have done. But interestingly, last year at the Adobe Summit, we were a sponsor.
Okay.
We were, a small company. We weren't really known to Adobe at the time, and we were able to apply and get a booth and actually just market as a exhibitor inside. This year, we tried it again. Good news, bad news. The good news was that they said, we know who you are. They didn't last year, so we're obviously on their radar, but they didn't invite us back. So not a big surprise, but it was good to be good that we're on their radar. I actually appreciated that. So instead, we had the team, as I said, go out there. We had 4 people. We made signs, and we had a theme and plans for what the group was going to say and do each of the 3 days of the summit. So if you want, I can get into some of that detail too.
Yeah, I think it's super fascinating. I'd love for you to share the details of that.
Yes, the themes were, day 1 was banned from the summit. So the team had T-shirts that said "banned" on it, big, loud, colorful T-shirts. Day 2 was a different theme. It was what is Adobe hiding? And then the third day was personalization hangover. And the third day they were giving out waters and whatnot. But the whole thing is they kept it fun. They stayed outside the venue. They tried to encroach a little bit. They went inside, stayed very respectful and polite. But they were escorted back off the Venetian, off the property. And they were sort of given a line. They said, "Oh, you guys got to stay here." And so that was the public sidewalk. But boy, they got a ton of traffic by them. People were we were giving out some postcards promoting a hashtag. It was the Adobe Alternative hashtag on Twitter. Back home, we had a team also trolling the Adobe Summit hashtag and posting a lot of content, directing people over to the Adobe Alternative content where we had our video and other, the comparison docs, as I said, things like that. But we kept it pretty fun. The team never took themselves too seriously. People were laughing. They had costumes. Day 2, in our video, we portray Adobe as a turkey, a slow-moving turkey. So we had one of our women dress up in a turkey suit on day 2. That got lots of laughs. She was out there dancing with people dressed as Elvis, and, it was Vegas. So they had a grand old time. They had a megaphone, they had signs, and they were, getting people's attention, including people, from Adobe, some, I think, who were bristling a little bit at it. And they were talking about it inside. And then other people from Adobe were saying, "Hey, you guys are, good for you," or, "You're definitely getting people talking inside," and things like that. So, it was overall pretty positive and fun.
So Andy, when you're looking at a campaign like that, what were some of the potential kind of downfalls, or what were some of the things that you guys were looking at as you developed the campaign, to kind of mitigate some of that risk?
Yeah, so you couldn't do it. If you're going to do it, you got to do it well, and you got to do it right, and you can't go too small. So we had 4 people. There was another event going on that we had other people for, so we had backups as well. We also rented a billboard, a rolling billboard for 3 days.
Okay.
Big giant sign said, personalization with Adobe. It had an image of a marketer throwing her money away, and then like a meme, it said the struggle is real. So we were getting people's attention. So that wasn't cheap. You had to plan ahead. You had to get the graphics and the artwork. It aligned with the video that we were promoting, and have been promoting a lot of the visuals. The messaging had to be right. The team had to be prepared for different situations. What do you do? With simple questions like that, all the way to why are you here and why are you doing this? And, why don't you go away?
Yeah.
And the team had to be trained to say, look, be respectful. Some people are not going to like this, but treat everyone, respectfully and remember that you're representing Evergage, and we take integrity very seriously at the company. It's a core part of our culture. We don't lie about anything. We're not making any false claims, but we're throwing some shade on some of the things that our competitors are saying, particularly Adobe in this case.
Got it. Okay, so as the marketers listening to this, Andy, as they're thinking through what a disruptive marketing campaign could look like for their brand, do you have any ideas on maybe what some goals could be that marketers should have for campaigns like this? Not necessarily, going to a competitor's conference, but a disruptive marketing campaign, in general.
Yeah, it's with these types of things, it's less about lead generation. Interestingly, I think there were at least a few good business cards collected from people saying, I kind of want to learn more. But it was really about brand awareness and getting on the radar, both with Adobe as well as getting coverage, like this podcast, or, we actually got very good coverage in the Next Web and CMS Wire. So there are other publications that wrote about us and again, not a big company. Adobe Summit, they put a lot into that event. If we can piggyback a little bit on those efforts to get our name out there, then that's a win. So that was our main goal. We did hand out cards explaining Evergage. We also had a contest. Forgot to mention that, but we had a contest that people tweeted to the Adobe Alternative hashtag. We were giving out gift cards for Starbucks. We also gave out a grand prize, an Amazon Tap and Spotify subscription. So getting people, to have fun with it, participate, having some incentives. And we actually got a huge number of followers picked up from that event on Twitter. We supplemented that with some paid ads. So we got probably 4 or 5x what we normally see on Twitter over those couple of days. So those sorts of awareness building goals is really all we set. Not so much, how many people are we going to get in the pipeline or close deals from this.
That makes sense. So now having that particular campaign in your rearview mirror now, as you look back on it, were there any lessons you learned that would be valuable for, the marketer listening to this that's looking to possibly do one of these campaigns in the future?
Yeah, a few things come to mind. So, I mentioned planning. It took a lot of planning and rehearsing and whatnot. So you got to have a plan, just like any marketing campaign. Have your spreadsheet and your checklist and all the responsibilities assigned and whatnot. It's also really critical to keep it top secret. You can really ruin the whole effort if word gets out what you're up to, and if they could have thwarted it. If Adobe was there ready and waiting and told security this might happen, we would have been it would have been really a big failure. So keeping it top secret. And then another point is getting really creative people. Think outside of marketing, think outside your company, certainly in other departments, any of the creative folks, get them together, get them brainstorming, come up with ideas, come up with, 50, 70 ideas and, implement, a half a dozen or a dozen. But you want the creativity of as many people as possible to feed the program.
Yeah, totally. So Andy, as we close out this interview, is there any kind of final words or, bits of advice that you would have for the marketers listening to this as it relates to disruptive marketing?
Well, one thing I kind of alluded to was remembering that your brand is at stake in these things. So you need to be careful, right? You don't want to cross a line. You don't want to be combative or confrontational. You want to keep it loose and keep it fun, and be, as I said, professional and respectful. The other thing is, marketers. We market solutions to marketers, and marketers respect clever ideas and clever programs. So, doing something like this, I think, gets people attention in a very positive way. For some, I'm sure maybe they look at it and they get a negative impression, but far more marketers say, hey, these guys really ran this effectively and they respect you for some creative, programs like these. So.
Awesome, Andy. Well, if there's somebody listening to this, maybe they want to dive deeper on this idea of disruptive marketing, or they want to learn more about Evergage, what's the best way for them to go about doing both of those things?
Well, certainly come visit our website, www.evergage.com. You can follow us at Evergage on Twitter. And we'll take any feedback as well. If you want to share my contact information, I'm happy to field questions directly as well.
Love it. Awesome, Andy. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, James. It's been fun.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you'd like to connect with B2B executives from all over the world, make sure to join our private Facebook community. There are some incredible conversations happening inside this group. To join, visit b2bgrowthshow.com/FB.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.